This is Fritz Haber. The Nobel Prize winner in chemistry in 1918 is the recipient of one of the most controversial Nobel Prizes in history. He was praised as a genius, a patriot, even a man who saved billions of lives. But he was also the father of chemical warfare, responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands in agonizing pain without a single bullet fired. What could cause a Nobel-winning scientist to be doubted and cursed by the entire world? This is a true story, both magnificent and dark, about Fritz Haber. Hit the like button and subscribe to dive into this haunting story right now. The genius who single-handedly changed the population curve. The story begins with the most important invention of the 20th century, a discovery that helped feed billions of people worldwide to this day. Haber was born in 1868 in the Kingdom of Prussia into a Jewish family. From an early age, he was obsessed with the idea of providing enough food for a rapidly growing population. After studying at the University of Berlin, he transferred to the University of Heidelberg in 1886 and studied under the famous German chemist Robert Bunsen. Haber was eventually appointed professor of physical and electrochemistry at the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology. At a time when scientists warned that the world would not be able to produce enough food for the rising population of the 20th century, he devoted himself to this challenge. In the mid-19th century, the Western world was engaged in a fierce race for resources. But the coveted treasure wasn't gold or oil, it was bird guano. Yes, you heard that right, this seemingly useless waste was packed with nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, the foundation of modern agriculture. Behind those piles of guano lay a multi-million-dollar empire, wars, slavery, and the birth of a great chemical revolution. At that time, finding a way to produce nitrogen fertilizer was the golden problem of the century. To increase crop yields, farmers began adding nitrogen to soil, first through manure, then through guano and fossil nitrates. At one point, guano was worth 4 times its weight in gold. On July 2, 1909, Fritz Haber produced a steady stream of liquid ammonia from hydrogen and nitrogen gases heated in an iron pipe under high pressure over an osmium catalyst. It was the first time ammonia had been synthesized this way. This method is now known as the Haber-Bosch process, named in part after Karl Bosch, a metallurgist and engineer who industrialized the entire process for global use. In 1912, construction began on a commercial-scale plant in Aupau, Germany, capable of producing 1 ton of liquid ammonia every 5 hours. By 1914, the plant was producing 20 tons of usable nitrogen daily. Today, chemical fertilizers account for about half of the nitrogen used in global agriculture, with even higher percentages in developed countries. The regions with the highest demand for these fertilizers are also those with the fastest-growing populations. Studies show that roughly 80% of the increase in nitrogen fertilizer consumption worldwide from 2000 to 2009 came from India and China. Even without looking at population growth in China or India, the impact of the Haber-Bosch process is clear: it transformed global food production. This achievement earned Haber the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1918, though many of his scientific peers strongly opposed the award. The war criminal. Haber's career soared, and during World War I, the German army asked for his help developing methods to replace explosives in shells with poisonous gases. Unlike his friend Albert Einstein, Haber was a loyal German nationalist willing to advise the German War Office. During World War I, he began experimenting with chlorine gas as a weapon. By 1915, battlefield failures intensified the push to use chemical weapons, despite the Hague Convention's ban on chemical warfare agents. Haber struggled to find any German military commander willing to conduct field tests. One general called gas warfare cowardly. Another said poisoning enemies was disgusting. But if it meant victory, the same general was ready to do what had to be done. Haber personally pleaded with the military to deploy chemical weapons to secure victory. In 1915, he oversaw the use of poison gas at the Second Battle of Ypres. Waiting for the right moment with favorable wind, German forces released 160 tons of chlorine gas from thousands of cylinders against the Allied troops on the morning of April 22. The result, over half of the 10,000 opposing soldiers died instantly from suffocation. Survivors endured unimaginable torment as the gas ravaged their bodies. The horrific damage caused such panic that even German forces were surprised by the enemy's rapid retreat. The Second Battle of Ypres saw nearly 70,000 Allied casualties, with German casualties roughly double, since it was the first large-scale use of chemical weapons. Shortly after receiving the rank of captain, Haber returned to Berlin on May 2, 1915, to attend a celebration in his honor. The next day, he headed to the Eastern Front to oversee another gas attack against Russian forces. By the end of World War I, German chemical weapons were largely neutralized by widespread gas mask use among Allied troops. Yet Haber and his collaborators faced harsh criticism from both sides, from Germans for their defeat, and from Allies for inhumane weaponry. Haber's life embodied the phrase, "Great talent often comes with great misfortune." On the very day he returned to Berlin from Ypres, his first wife, also a chemist, committed suicide. She had long struggled with the stress of raising their child and fiercely opposed her husband's war research. But the tragedy didn't end there. After his wife's death, Haber's career and personal life stagnated. By the early 1930s, as anti-Jewish sentiment surged in Germany, he lost his position. He wandered Europe seeking refuge, but everywhere he went, he was condemned for his wartime actions. Haber died in a hotel in Switzerland in 1934, never publicly expressing regret for his mistakes. What's worse, the consequences of his scientific work lingered long after. In the 1920s, Haber and colleagues developed pesticides containing hydrogen cyanide, a highly toxic substance. These became commercial products known as Zyklon A and Zyklon B. During World War II, Zyklon B was horrifically used to exterminate Jews in concentration camps. Victims included Haber's own relatives. This is perhaps the darkest legacy of Haber's life, or any scientist's in the last century. The story of Fritz Haber is not just a historical lesson but a profound reminder of the power and responsibility science carries in our world. What do you think of this brilliant yet deeply conflicted man? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you found this story compelling, please share the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to explore more fascinating and inspiring history stories.